Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss on rendering list in React. So without any delay, let's get started. First of all, we are going to discuss what is a list. Okay, so list is a pretty important data structure in any programming language. It helps us in handling mutable data and push items or remove items from it. In React, lists are used mainly to render an HTML element repetitively to show some data. For example, if from an API we have got 4 objects which contain some data, we can render it on UI using the same div element just by iterating on it and passing different data as props to it. Example, products page in e-commerce website. So if you are coming from a JavaScript background, or if you are already familiar with languages which support list or array, you know what I am talking about. So list in React is pretty similar to list in JavaScript. Basically, it is used to store a series of data. Okay, now for an example, why rendering of list in React is so important. So if you are familiar with any e-commerce website like Amazon or Flipkart, you will know that in an e-commerce website there is a products page, and in that products page you see a series of product cards where you see the product image, the product price, product title, product description, and a call to action button where you are asked either you can buy now or add to cart. So you might think that for each of those products, if those cards are actually created by hard coding, but that's not the case. What happens in reality, basically when the page is loaded, an API call is made to the backend, and from the backend the data is loaded into the front end. When the data is loaded, there is a cart component which is created only once, which accepts some props and show that data as per the props received. Now what happens, suppose for a first page you have got 10 product details from an API. So what happens, whenever the 10 data is received, the loop runs on those 10 data and basically renders the same component 10 times just by passing different props to it. For 10 items, the loop runs 10 times, and for each run it passes the data as props to the component. So that's why the component get rendered 10 times but with 10 different type of data. And that is the core use of using list in React. By rendering list in React, we basically reuse our code. Okay. So I hope this part is clear with you. And if it's not pretty clear till now, don't worry. We will learn about this in detail when we do the coding and I show you how actually we can implement the same. Okay. So I guess our theoretical part is over. Let's go to the VS Code and check how we can implement the same. We are back again to our VS Code, and here as you can see I have created a folder rendering list within our source folder. Within this folder I have two files, rendering list cc and rendering list fc. And if you are familiar with my style of teaching, you know I write cc for the components where I teach you the concept using class components, and I write fc for the components where I teach you using function components. Okay, so as you have already guessed, I will teach you rendering list in React both using class components and function components, and trust me, they are pretty much same, but few of the things respect to your class component and function component changes, which you are already aware if you have watched my previous videos where I have discussed in detail about components, class components and function components. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic. First of all, let's start with the function component. In function component, firstly we have imported useStateHook, which we will use to store some local data. Thereafter I have defined an interface user which contains an ID as number and a name as string. Then I have created a variable user data from API which will contain an array of user data, and I have given some dummy data to it. So in reality, in production grade application, this won't be the case. Basically what will happen, within the useEffectHook, you will make a call to the backend API, and when the API will fetch you the data, you will basically store it in the local state variable. But here my intention is not to confuse you or increase the code size by introducing more hooks, rather teach you the main concept of rendering list in React. So here I have done a shortcut. Then I have defined the friends page component using the function component concept, and within it we have set up a local state variable. And if you have watched my previous videos, you already know what a useStateHook does. it basically accepts an argument which it sets as the initial value of the local state variable, and it not only returns the local state variable but also a method to update that state variable. And we are not using this method over here. Within the return, we have defined our div with container fluid and unordered list. So now we come to the main topic. How do we render list actually? Basically, we do it by writing a pair of curly braces. Within that, as I have already said, this friends is the basically our local variable. So we basically map over this friends variable for each particular item which we have termed as friend, which should be of type user. We are returning a list. Okay, within list we basically specify the name of our friend. Now a question which can come to your mind is basically, why have we used this key attribute? So this is very important, and always remember, whenever you render a list in React, you should have a key attribute for the repetitive element. And the benefit of using key attribute is basically it optimizes your React application. When you specify a key attribute for the repetitive element, what happens is basically React can track all those elements in case you add some, you update some, or you delete any element from the list. It basically helps React to repaint the DOM based on the current state variables. Okay, so there are two key takeaways. The first one is, this is the way how we render list in React, by basically mapping over the local state variable, taking each one of them and then returning the repetitive element. Second, for repetitive element, we must mention the key attribute. Okay, so if this thing works, we must see the name of our friends as a form of unordered list on our browser. So to do that, first of all, we need to import this into our app.tsx file, which we will do now. And once imported, we have called it from the app.tsx. So let us run our code and see if it's working. So let's wait for some time and see. Yes, our application has started, and see, as we have already said, we see the name of our friends in a form of unordered list in React. Okay. So I hope this is pretty much clear with you now. So let's go back to our VS Code and learn how can we do the exact same thing using class components. So when we talk about class components, here also I have done the exact same thing. I have imported React and useState from the React library. Thereafter, we have defined an interface like we have done in the function component. So this user interface will contain an ID as number and name as string. We have defined our dummy data over here. And then we have defined our class component. So how do we define our class component? Firstly, the class keyword followed by the name of our class component, which should extend from the component class in React. Within here, we pass two types. First one, the type of the prop. So here, as we are taking in no prop, so it's a blank pair of curly braces. And in the second, we define the local state variable we are using. So as we are using friends as the variable, which should contain an array of user data type. So we have specified it. Within that, we have defined our local state variable and set the state as friends and the data as user data from API. Then within our render method, which should return a JSX, we return the same code as we have done in the function component. Within a pair of curly braces, we have iterated over the friend's local state variable, and for each friend, we have returned the repetitive element. We have mentioned our key for optimization to help React to track all these items, and we have showed the name of our friend on the UI. And finally, we have exported this component. Now again, we have to export this in our main app. So again, we need to export it in our app.tsx file and then see if it's working. So if things are perfect, we should see the same output. So let us run our code and see if it's working. So our application has started, and as we can see, like the previous one, we can see the same output on the browser. So we are done with our concept, and I have also shown you how we can render list in React both using class component and function component. Okay, the main part is pretty much same, only the way of writing a class component and a function component is different, and that's the whole difference in this video. So I hope you find this video informative. In case you like the video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.